People tell me all the time that when facing their big, messy paper organizing project, that they just don't know where to start. People seem to be afraid to start if they can't see the end result, if they can't picture, their perfect system or their perfect categories. They don't know where to start, or they don't want to create a mess in the meantime. Well, usually we have to create a mess in the meantime. We have to get our hands in it, even if we don't know what it's going to look like, right? I believe that to create a functional, beautiful office, you kind of have to get your hands in the clay. I've been doing this for over 20 years, but I too sometimes have to just spread it all out to wrap my head around it and see what's what and who's who, and even know what the next step is. So we're not going to go from unsorted to a perfect office. We're just going to go from totally unsorted to a little bit more sorted. Sometimes that means you've got tons of categories laid out in front of you, and the next step reveals itself. It's always a really beautiful process, at least for an organizer. So I'm going to walk you through 9 clients who I've done this with. I've done it with hundreds, but these 9 stories are going to illustrate for you what your process might look like. This first one, obviously, is me sorting. So a little bit about this office. This picture is meant to teach you that you don't have to sort it all at once. This is an office where when I walked in, there were banker's boxes everywhere on the floor. There were a few filing cabinets that had paper easily dating back to the 80s. And this process that you're looking at me go through is something we did over and over and over and over again. You don't have to sort it all at once. In order for us to turn tons of banker's boxes into what's sort of becoming at least 24 file cabinets, we had to do exactly this work. So you don't have to do it all at once. It might be this project, a small project like this, dozens and dozens of times over. This next client story tells you that you can do this just with one category. This is a client I'd known for a really long time. At this point, we had already sorted tons of paper across 2 different homes. And right here, all we're doing is just sorting her entertainment files. These are menus and memorabilia from parties she had thrown. And this is the end result. I want you to look at the binder that says hostess and party history. So the sorting process allowed us to kind of get these papers out of wherever they were. I think they were in some, boxes in the closet, or maybe dingier notebooks, and turn it into this. But it all started with just sorting paper. This next photo is just to teach you that you can and probably should do this regularly. This is with a client who brings me in maybe a couple times a year, and we usually start our sessions by just sorting her mail. So maybe you can relate, but she usually has a ton of mail and newspaper piles on her countertop, on a bench right next to the countertop, and we just sort her mail, and a lot of it gets thrown out. So if you've got piles and piles of mail, the only way through it, don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but the only way through it is probably going to be to spread it out and sort. With this picture, I want to teach you that sometimes you take time to spread things out and sort just to throw it all away. This is a client where, if I remember correctly, these papers were actually in a file cabinet, but they weren't organized. So we took them out of the cabinet, sorted them on the floor, only for him to realize, why on earth am I keeping these? So just because you invest some time into sorting stuff, don't feel like you're then obligated to keep it. We had to go through this process in order to fill the recycling bin, just so he knew he wasn't getting rid of anything important. This little story here is to show you that just because you're spreading out and sorting, you don't have to live with piles spread out on the floor throughout the whole process. So This client, for example, it took weeks to organize her paper. It was here in the dining room, it was down in the basement, but we were able to spend a couple of hours sorting paper. And then before I left, we created this box. So this box is not a permanent filing system by any means, and she actually ended up getting rid of quite a lot of it. But this box allowed her to just get everything off the floor so she didn't have to stare at it. It's still very much a work in progress, but she can live with this box, shove it to the side without, dealing with the paper while she's still in the project. And these next 3 pictures are from the same client. I share them just to show you that you can get creative with this. Sometimes my clients have the best ideas. So this client, this was her idea that we executed. It was so much fun. She was like, you know what, Kacy, I'm fine if I have bite-sized projects, and I'm fine if you help me create some pretty random piles, as long as they're all bite-sized and something I can sort later tonight after you're gone. So this was in her home office that was just off of her bedroom. And here we've got probably 15 or so piles that we created. And this was a client I actually traveled to see, and I did see her the next day, and she had gone through many of these piles. I don't remember how many exactly, but in her case, she was like, all I need to do is just say, I'm going to start with pile 1, and I'm going to finish pile 1 before moving on to pile 2. Repeat, repeat, repeat. I thought it was so creative, and I was really happy to help her do it. It was different. It was a little bit off the wall. It's not for everybody. Some people wouldn't want to work with an organizer just to create, a dozen or more totally random piles. But our work together got the creative juices flowing so she could create a sorting system that worked for her. I just think that was so cool, and it was really effective too. These next couple of clients I'm sharing with you because we did something I love to do. We used vertical shelves to sort. So this client had just moved, and there was a lot of construction going on in the house, and the movers had just kind of put things wherever they could put them, and they happened to put a lot of her paper in her primary bedroom closet. I was really excited about that because when I walked into the closet, she had these empty shelves. We didn't have a ton of space on the floor, though we could have created it if we had to, but instead we created 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, about 10 categories on the shelf, so they weren't taking up any space on the floor. And this is something I do all the time whenever there's an abandoned bookshelf, an underutilized bookshelf. It's just a really efficient use of space. Again, obviously this is not a permanent system. She ended up, of course, putting clothing here, but we use the space that we have. Use the space that you have. I'm sure it's right in front of you, and hopefully these lessons will help you see that. These photos are to show you that sometimes spreading it all out and sorting is the first step in a long journey. This was a basement home office. You walked in and there was shelving on both sides of the wall and some in the back, and they were pretty full. I remember taking some things off the shelves in the very beginning because I knew we were going to use this shelving to sort. We certainly could have used the floor. Sometimes all we have is the floor, and that's totally fine. But in this case, he had the luxury of this shelving, and this is exactly what we did with it. And just to show you, the categories we're creating aren't that exotic. This work is not, insanely secretive or proprietary. What professional organizers do is they just sit with somebody as the work is done, and they do the work with them. But the work itself really isn't that, glamorous or exotic. So these categories are just, we've got his wife, we have financial archives, we have house, we have renovations, and paper by paper, category by category. This is how we got through all of it in the office. And this is the end result. You're only looking at one wall. I mean, so much was done in this space. But just, getting our hands on all of the paper, sorting it with the shelving that we had, that got us to what you're looking at here. It was really wonderful to see the process through. And this last client story I share with you because I want you to know that sometimes an ugly process can end beautifully. It happens all the time. So this is the third example of using vertical shelving to sort. I want you to notice something. I want you to notice that I'm not, in this case, labeling the shelves. We already have file folders, but we can't always easily see every single file folder label. So we're using these little stickies that stick out just so we don't have to rummage through the files every time we want to add something. And this process, which is not so good looking, led us to this, which is very good looking. This home office had a small underutilized hallway closet just outside, and through the paper sorting process, obviously we determined what we were throwing away, what we were keeping, and a lot of the paper that we kept ended up in these 3 or 4 file boxes. So even if you don't have this space that looks like this available to you, just know that wherever you are taking the first step to your version of this. So with that, I really hope these lessons were helpful. Again, I just wanted to share with you what the work looks like. This is sometimes very hard work for people. Sometimes it's really easy once we get started. But this is what the work looks like. I want you to know that you can't get it wrong. If I've helped hundreds of clients, we've done it hundreds of different ways. So with that, please like if you found this helpful. Please leave a comment specifically about what it is you're going to be doing now. Are you going to be doing this in your home office? Are you going to be doing this for piles in your bedroom or your kitchen? And just thank you for stopping by. I have so many more lessons where these came from, and I look forward to seeing you again.